What's up, guys? Welcome to Powerline Podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome. Happy to have you. I hope you get some value out of the episode. For my longtime listeners and followers, I really appreciate you guys. And speaking of longtime listener and follower, this guy, John, aka Stix, has been around, I swear, since the beginning. He's been a longtime supporter and follower of the podcast, but I finally had him on the show. I think you're going to get a lot out of this episode. He's a burn survivor, burn victim / survivor. Had burns to 60% of his body, and there's like a lot of lessons in going through this tragedy that he had to go through, coming out of it, and entering into the world of industry and trades and blue collar as a safety professional. Tons of value in this. Please tune in, and I hope you love it. All right, let's jump right in. John, I'm stoked that you're on here because I think you're one of my OG followers, dude. I think you've been there way back in the day, and I'm stoked to finally connect with you and have you on the show and talk about your experiences in the trades in general. You've from me watching you, from my experience watching you, you're a guy it's really moved around a lot. It seems like you've got a lot of experience with a lot of different industries and blue collar. And yeah, I'm stoked to dive into it with you. So welcome to Powerline Podcast.
No, I'm happy to be here, man. I've been following you since you were doing it from your house. I think I stumbled upon you on Instagram, and I think you're barely on episode 40 when I started listening.
That's it was 2020, man. That's
yeah, it was COVID. I remember that because I was actually working from home, and I was like, man, I need a good podcast. And I was looking around. I was like, I'm going to check this guy out. And I started listening. I was hooked, man. I was like, dude, I love it. I love the stuff you touched on. And ever since then, man, it's just been listening to you. So yeah, no, I'm really honored to be here and be on this podcast.
Cool, dude. Well, I appreciate taking the time out of your day. I like to start, I'm sure you've listened to these, so I'd love to just start with your story, with your background. So where are you from? Where are you hailing from?
I'm out here in Maricopa, Arizona right now. I was born and raised out in Arizona. I'm a native to the desert cactuses out here and tumbleweeds. So, it's not bad out here, but a lot of people move here for the weather, and I'm kind of opposite. I want to be up in the Pacific Northwest, up in Washington, because it's a lot better. It's funny because you go to PNW and people are like, we don't like it here. It rains too much. And me, I'm like, I love it. This is better than a freaking 120 degree heat that we have out there and dry weather and dust storms that we get. And they're like, well, I would love that. I'm like, hey, you have fun with that. I'll trade you any day.
I'll swap you for a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a fan of winter. It's probably just because I worked a lot in winter and just really don't like being cold.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
For a good portion. And I know that's a real winter out there. I've seen some guys that were oil guys working there, and I'm like, holy moly, having to warm up their tools and get things going. One guy's like, it's cold when you got to torch a bolt to get it off because it's frozen shut. And I'm like, oh my God, now that's some winter conditions out there. That's brutal. That's a whole other degree of winter.
A lot of guys have had it way harder than I ever had it. But one experience I did have with cold weather was Fort Mac, northern Alberta, in oil country in northern Alberta. And 2 months straight, it was a solid 2 months straight of minus 40 to minus 45. And it's the same Fahrenheit and Celsius is the same at minus 40 for 2 months solid. And it's the kind of country where you leave your trucks running 24/7. You fill them up and you just let them run all night long, lock the doors while you're sleeping. So all night long, and you're sleeping in a camp. So it's camp life. It's thin walls. It's cold. The heaters barely keep up. You're sleeping in your clothes and in a sleeping bag, and every day is freaking cold. And you just hear that clack, 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 clack of those diesels running in the parking lot.
It's funny. It's funny you said that because I was actually going to buy a truck one time, and the guy's like, it's super low miles on it. And I was looking into it, but he goes, there's a downside to it. And I said, what? He goes, it comes from Canada. And I was like, what's wrong with that? And he goes, this truck probably ran nonstop during the winter. So it's been like running nonstop because they don't want it to freeze. And so he's like, yeah, they will turn them on and just leave them running consistently. And I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, man, I'm just warning you. The engine might be good on it. It's really low miles because it wasn't, but it's been running like 24/7. So I'm like, oh yeah, maybe not the best truck to have. I'm like, I don't feel like replacing a Duramax.
Dude, we had our grunts. Like our grunts would take the bucket trucks and digger trucks. They didn't like to run very long just on idle, right? And they would get all carboned up, and you'd have to take them out on. So we had like a flow of guys just taking the trucks out to the highway and running them for 2 or 3 hours as fast as they could go, just to burn the carbon out and like get them going again, where they wouldn't go through their big regen cycle and shut your job down for an entire day. Yeah. It's like,
we go drag race the bucket truck real quick while we blow it out.
Pretty much.
Check this out real quick.
Running 100-foot bucket trucks down the highway just
right. We'll set up with the digger and see who makes it to the end first.
I remember being up,
crazy, man.
Like, again, like a lot of buddies who've spent their entire careers up in that country. So like much respect to them. And they're probably laughing right now, just like, yeah, it's just another day. But like my experience up there on those towers, 120 foot towers, you're like 100 feet above the tree line. Like trees don't even grow very high up in that area because it's just too cold for too long of the year. And so you're just up fully exposed to the wind and the elements and like whatever God wants to throw at you, you're fully exposed to it up there. And it's like,
oh yeah, man, it's the coldest. It gets worse as the higher you're up.
Yeah.
The higher you're up, it gets worse. A lot of people don't realize that because like, when I was on a high rise in the middle of Seattle, it was cold at the ground level. But then when we got on this 30-story, there was no windows. It's still bare ironwork. It was a whole nother set of, it probably wasn't bad as there, but it was like, whoa, it's a lot windier up here. And that crane op on the tower crane's like, yeah, it's bad up here, man. He's like, it doesn't seem like that below because ground level, you got buildings and stuff shielding you. But once you're freestanding up there, it's a whole nother game. So yeah, those guys that are working in Canada, man, my hat's off to them because that's a whole nother level of elements that I have not experienced, and I don't have any intention to experience any weather like that. And if I do, I mean, great, but I'm not something I want to, which, I mean, that's crazy, but that's like with you going to Everest recently. I was like, this guy's like, that's going to be nothing to him. Like, he's used to it. Like, he's probably like, oh, it's cold, but it is what it is,
I've talked about it quite a bit recently since I come back. I've talked about it quite a bit on the podcast, and I just think it's valuable to keep talking about it because like, and it goes to this, like doing hard things. And Dex is sitting behind me, he's probably sick of hearing me talk about this, but literally it preps you in life to, when you do hard things and you choose to do those hard things and put yourself in that situation, you build a resilience for when it comes to a point later in life where you didn't choose something hard. And it hits you, something hard, something difficult happens in your life. You have that resilience built up now to potentially get through that thing that's difficult with more ease. And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about, like some of the things you've had to go through that were difficult, I'm sure. And we'll get into that, but like, that's what I mean. If you can like purposely put yourself in these hard situations, whether it's like, line work kind of preps you for that. Any blue collar, outdoor, exposed to the elements, any industry like that really puts you in a difficult situation day in, day out, and can really prep you to do something like, Everest, or if something involuntary comes along your life, like you have an accident or you get sick or disease or something, you got to go through something difficult. You have this resilience built up and this knowing inside you that you can get through that thing that's difficult. And that's what I like about doing hard things. It builds up some resilience towards it.
Exactly. It really does. I listen to a lot of guys like Andy Frisella and, some of Jocko and stuff. And that's one thing I'll share in common is do hard stuff, and it sounds stupid, but at the end of the day, the more you get in these routines and you have that persistence and you keep doing things that are hard, when life kicks you in the nuts essentially, or gives you a situation you're not ready for, you're going to overcome it with ease. And there's much more satisfaction, I think, that comes after doing something hard. You know, anybody can do something easy, but when you choose to do something hard and you put your mind through it, you're getting through that mental or physical toughness, it really does start building that character in you where you're like, you know, you see those guys in the rooms, like I can point them out, you see those hard chargers get in the rooms, and you know, you notice in their character how they handle things, how they talk things. It's because what they choose to do. They do hard stuff, and it starts building that character in you. And so, whether you're in a trade or just life in general, you can normally tackle those situations almost with ease because you're like, all right, I'll get through it. You know, and you have that mental toughness, and and that's a big part of it. It's a big mental game too. It really is. You get inside your own head sometimes, and you're like, it'll throw you off.
Yeah, for sure. What's growing up in Arizona like?
It wasn't bad. So I grew up way down south, past Tucson, in a little town called Sierra Vista. A lot of people don't know it. A little military town, and at the time, I think there's like 25,000 people there. And so, growing up, we're really close to Tombstone, which is where the movie's based off of. And growing up out there, man, it's a different way of life. It was. There's a lot of cowboys around you. There's a lot of people that are still living in that Western age. And so when I grew up, it was completely different. It was yes, sir, no, ma'am. You worked hard. I mean, I could count endless times I was out in the yard when I was like 6 years old, helping my dad dig trenches for the water line for our house and doing things. And, he really showed me the value of work, hard work and how it pays off in the end. And I gotta thank him for it. It made me who I am today. And, I spent a lot of endless days there. And as I progressed on to like middle school, he had his own framing business. And so I wasn't really handed anything in life at all. It was always earned somehow. And so I was always a kid that wanted new skate shoes and, skateboards and stuff. And my dad's like, well, I've got work. So if you want to get off the school bus over here, I need you to clean up all these houses. I need you to pick up all the scrap 2x4s, all the spent, materials from everything, straighten them up. And I'll pay you $45 a day to do that. And so I was like, shoot, that back then, that was a long time ago. I was like, that's a lot of money a day. And so I tapped my bus driver on the shoulder, like, I need you to drop me here. And he's like, this is not your stop. I'm like, yeah, but my dad builds his houses and I'm going to work. And people would laugh at me. They'd be like, oh, he's not going to work. And I put my bag down, grab my gloves out of my backpack and throw my headphones in, man. And I would just start cleaning up the houses. And my dad would text me, be like, hey, this house number all the way down, clean it up. All right, perfect. Throwing scraps away. He'd come get me around dinner time. I'd go home, do my homework. And I remember Friday came. He's like, all right, mister, here you go. This is how many days you worked. And like weekends too. He was like, hey, you want to learn about framing? I was like, shoot, yeah. I want to, So I started off learning how to read a tape measure. And him and my uncle are two amazing freaking carpenters, man. It runs in their blood. My grandfather was a union iron worker out of Portland, Oregon. So it's this construction runs in us, man. And I learned a lot. And I started learning to do freaking trusses and walk them and put plywood on. And during the summers, I started working too. I was addicted, man. I loved it. I loved being around the guys. I started being like, hey, this is fun, man. Can I work with you on a summer? He's like, all right, well, yeah, I could do that. If you want to spend like maybe 5 hours a day out there, get up with me. So 4 a.m, I hear that coffee pot click on. I'm like, all right, it's time to get up, get my boots on, get in my dad's truck. We'd stop off at Circle K, get some food, and here we go. We're going to work. And I remember my first set of tool bags, man. And I'll never forget that. It was different growing up. And then after a while, his business went down with the recession back in '08. And it wasn't hard for me because I went to work at Taco Bell until I graduated in 2010. I was like, I'll find work somehow. You know what I mean? I was so used to work, and I was like, I'll work that. And I had some pretty high hopes, man, to getting in the military. Believe it or not, I was like, I wanted to be a combat medic, and I was like, dude, I think I'm gonna get in the military. And I had kind of a backup plan. So like, hey, if that doesn't work, I want to be a firefighter. And so come senior year was 2009. I was working out. I had weight training class junior and senior year, and I was working out. I was a psychopath. I was running up the bleachers with like 100 pounds of weights in my bag. And everyone's like, why are you doing that? I was like, because I want to make it into the fire academy, because this guy's worked out like nonstop, because literally your body is pretty much your physique depends on somebody living and dying. If you're not in shape, you fall down, and that firefighter, that citizen's waiting for you to get them out of somewhere. You could really put yourself in a bad situation. So come senior year, my little fire department threw a junior academy specifically for high schoolers, an Explorer Academy. And man, my eyes lit up. I went straight down to that fire station. I applied. I was like, dude, I want on this list. It opened up, and I was addicted, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, dude, I'm gonna be a fireman. This is what I'm gonna do with my life. I'm gonna get into college, get my fire science out of the way, get everything done. I graduated at the top of my class through it, and I'll never forget that. I met a lot of good guys, and unfortunately, a really, really serious accident that almost took my life, and I derailed pretty much everything. And that's one of those things in life where life will kick you in the nuts sometimes, and you're not expecting it. But
Yeah.
I guess we want to go ahead and get into that part, I guess, about the accident. I'll go ahead and dive right into that. So we had a bonfire going. It was a buddy of mine, and we're just hanging out spring break. Nothing, nothing too crazy. And as it was burning, there was a 5-gallon gas can, plastic gas can hanging there. And I thought, oh, I better move that. I don't want, some freak accident happening. And I kind of tapped it and it was empty. So I thought with moving it, it'd be fine. And that's actually when it's most potent, it's full of fumes. Moved it out of the way, wind shifted, caught the fume trail, and it blew up in my hand. It took me a good minute to realize I was on fire. It was like a flashbang went off, man. I couldn't hear anything, couldn't see anything. I started looking around. My vision was like spotty and gray. The dude that was next to me was freaking out, and I didn't know what he's saying. I could not hear a thing. And that's what I said. It was like a flashbang went off, and I'm like, "What are you saying?" And he was jumping around, and he's like running around, man. He's full panic. He's trying to figure something out. I looked down, and I realized my shirt, my pants, my shoes was fully engulfed, and I started freaking out, man. I was like, "Oh crap!" As I'm trying to move and roll around, there's brush around me that's like 5 foot high. So I'm lighting that on fire. And I kind of just remembered that. I don't know why, but in that moment, I remembered that I had a dog water trough with big Sterilite containers that you use to kind of pack things. We used that for the Rottweiler we had at the time. And I was their water trough. And I was like, wait, I just filled that. So I'm beelining it 40 foot, 50 foot away. I'm trying to run. I feel the flames burning up the back of my ears. And this is where things get really freaky with the near-death experiences. My mom's side, my grandma and grandma are passed away. As I'm running, I see them, and I'm going like, "This is it." I saw their faces, and it scared the crap out of me. And I'll never forget that. I was like, "I'm gonna die. Like this is it. Like I'm very
Dang.
close to just being done." Yeah, that talk about, I never thought that stuff was true. Like people saying, hey, you sometimes see loved ones right before you're about to die that are passed away. It's true. I saw their faces, and I remember to this day looked healthy. I was like, holy crap, like this is about to be it. And so I'm sprinting, trying to get over this 4 foot wall where the water trough is. I can't get up the first time. Second time, I'm trying, my legs are shaking. I slide back down, and like flames are just coming at the back of my hair. Like I can feel the back of my head just starting to burn, and I'm like trying to like not pay mind to it and trying to get over it. Finally, I head dive, landed by the trough. I pull it down on me, and I start rolling, and it gets me out. I'm like, dude, there's so much water came out. Dude ran around. He was like, are you all right? Are you all right? And first I did, I said, do I have all my digits? He goes, oh my God. I'm waiting for him to be like, dude, you blew your fingers off. He goes, no, 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 no. Your fingers are still there, but you have no skin on your hand, bro. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And he's like, what's great about that? I was like, dude, I thought I blew my hand off. And I'm looking, I'm like, okay, it's all right. Call 911. It'll be fine. He calls 911. He gets him started. Small town, right? So it's this fire station's like 10 minutes away. I hear the sirens. I'm like, all right, cool, they're coming. I got undressed, and this is where it got bad. Is as I pull down my jeans, take them off, it smells like gasoline. They're still sizzling. I get them off. I have nothing left on my legs as far as skin. And I was like, is it like, I was like, oh my God. And he's freaking out. I'm like, dude, it's okay. Walked back out to the yard, put my shoes back on. And he's like, what are you doing? I was like, let me put out the rest of this fire real quick. So I grabbed the water hose, I sprayed it out. And I'm like, he's like, just come inside. I'm like, let me get this out real quick, because I have to explain to my parents that we might not have a house right now. So I put everything out. It was good. I walked back in. I grabbed the first aid kit, started bandaging my hand. It was bleeding like crazy everywhere. I looked at my legs, and I was like getting various spots that were kind of bleeding out with, the gauze that we had. And opened up the front door, and I remember seeing that fire truck come in, and I talked to the guy, and medic gets out, talked to him, and he's like, I would ask you how you're doing today, but that's probably a bad question. I was like, I'm doing all right, man. I was like, you need to call my mom. I was like, she's at work right now. We need to call her. And so the guy that was there, I forget his name, he ended up calling, got her started. So she's en route, and at that time, they laid me down to check me out. My instructor for my class is there, and I just seen him the night before when I graduated, and I remember, I'll never forget that he dropped the fire extinguisher, and he was like, "Oh my god!" He was like, "We need to call the fire chief and let him know it's one of our own that's down." And he was talking to me through the whole thing, and I remember that as that started happening, I started feeling very weird, like kind of like going in and out, and I was starting to go in shock a little bit. And so he was talking to me. I remember my mom showing up out of nowhere, like I didn't even hear a truck. She's freaking out. They're turning me over, and they're like, "Does your back hurt?" And at that point, the full pain train is ensued, right? Like I'm feeling everything at that point. Finally, I'm like, dude, I'm in so much pain. I'm screaming and crying. And finally, the captain's looking at me, and he's like, "All right, man, you stay with me." He's like, "I'm going to get an LZ started. We're going to have to medevac you to Phoenix, which is 3 hours from my town." He's like, "We're just get them on a chopper and get them out of here." So they're working with me. My mom's talking to me, and they roll me on my side, and they're like, "Hey, does your back hurt?" I'm like, "No, I can't really. It's just my legs and my arm that had suffered a really bad burn." And they said, "Well, your back is missing all the skin too, dude." So I was like, "Oh, great." Yeah, so it was pretty bad, man. And I remember they're like, "We're gonna get him on a backboard. We're gonna take him out of here." And I forget his name, the captain that was there, and I didn't tell him. I said, "Cap." He's like, "What?" And I was like, "I want to walk away from this." He's like, "You want to get up and walk?" I said, "Yeah, dude. Just I want to be able to walk. Just let me at least walk. Try to walk away from this." And so he stood me up, gave me the blue tarp, and said, "Hey, because I'm pretty much dying with clothing on." And so I walked up to the gurney, covered me up, threw me in the ambulance. And they were originally going to wait for LifeNet, which is our medical chopper land. LifeNet ended up radioing back that they were bingo on fuel, meaning they don't have a lot of fuel. They said, "Hey, bring them to the hospital. We'll just take them and we'll fuel up on the way." So we're lights and sirens to the hospital. Here we go again, getting out. All my family's there. We're um, pretty much saying, and I'm like, "Hey," I remember telling him, I was like, "I love every one of you, and I don't know how this is going to pan out." I knew it was bad. I was like, "Dude, this isn't good." So told everybody I loved them. And I remember going up in the elevator, got in a helicopter, and guys like, "You ever been in a helicopter?" I said, "No, not the way I wanted to get my first ride. I had other ways I wanted my first ride in that." And they were phenomenal burn nurses, man, and I thank them till this day for it, because they did a level of care that they were good guys, man. They were good flight nurses that was on there. So we're lifting off, and I remember he's like, "Hey, we're gonna land in Tucson, which is an hour away from my town." He's like, "We gotta fuel up real quick, and then we'll get you over to the burn unit." So I was like, "All right." And I remember I was in so much pain, I could taste gasoline in my mouth. I said, "Hey, man, can I ask you a favor?" He's like, "Dude, you can cry like a baby if you want to. You have every right to." I said, "Hey, man, can I get something to drink?" He goes, "Unfortunately, no. I don't know if they're going to throw you in surgery when you get there. So we have to not give you any fluids." But he goes, "I got this wet sponge essentially that's in there to kind of wet your lips to try to help you out." And I said, "Yeah, if you could." And they were like giving me like 10 cc's of morphine. He's like, "Sorry, it was like very little." He goes, "I can't juice you up because you have surgery. They don't want the drugs intermixed together." So fuel up. We're in the air. I'm in a bed in the chopper like this. There's a door next to me on the left side. The right side, there's a single pilot, and in the back, there's two flight nurses. And so the pilot looks over, he taps on her leg, says, "Hey, we're 5 minutes out." He's like, "It's going to get loud. I'm going to throw you off this thing, and we're going to kind of hot offload you out of here. Okay, it's going to get real loud. So just prepping you." I said, "All right, man." He goes, "All right, buddy." So he swings it in, and I have a little window right there. And I remember seeing 6 white coats with a gurney just waiting there. And as soon as he sets it down, it's like a military man. He's waving them over. He goes, "All right, dude, so when it's going to get loud." Guy walks out around the chopper. He's got his helmet on, pops the door open, slides the bed out. Here comes the nurses. He goes, "All right, 1, 2, 3." They lift it up. Here we go in the hospital. And I was very coherent on everything when I asked him when I first got there. And the doc's looking at me. They're moving my legs, taking pictures of everything. So they're going to keep a file when I was there. And I told him, I said, "I'm going to be here a while, aren't I?" And he starts laughing. He goes, "Yeah, bro, you're going to have a long journey ahead of you." Because I had no idea how burns work, dude. Like, I was like, "Hey, just throw some gauze on me, give me some pain meds, it'll heal back." I didn't know. And so I remember being there, and this doctor was there, and I was like, "Dude, I'm so thirsty right now." And I wasn't paying attention at the time because there's so much going on with them blanketing me. They moved my arm, and it was as black as my shirt, like my legs and everything. I was like, I kind of, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Dude, that's oh my God. He's like, yeah, man, you're pretty beat up right now. And I was like, dude, that's my body. Like, I'm burned right now, like so bad. And so I just wanted something to drink. And finally, he came back with this big old like lemon lime Gatorade and goes, "Good news, we're not going to throw you in surgery. So drink up." So I shoved that thing down. I had the gasoline taste in my mouth. And then he said, "I'm going to hit you with a plethora of drugs right now." He goes, "You ever have drugs in your life?" And I was like, "Dude, I've never been in a hospital in my life. Like, I've gotten injuries here and there, but I've never had to take anything for it." And so he's like, "Well, I'm going to give you Versed and morphine and all this stuff together. It's kind of a cocktail. It'll probably knock you out, and we're going to get you cleaned up." So, yeah, man, I woke up and I'm gauzed up, and my parents are next to me, and it was a rough 4 months. The first few weeks in that burn unit were I wasn't even sure I was going to be here anymore. The doctors were talking to my parents, and I knew it wasn't good. And the doctor's like, "We're doing everything we can for you. The problem is your skin keeps all of your fluids in, and you're so burned that your body can't retain all those fluids. They're just leaking out." And I kind of was wondering why, because like I'd wake up and like where my legs are laying, the sheets are wet, and I'm like, "Why is this all wet?" And they're like, "That's the fluids from your IVs just leaking
I've
out."
wondered
And
that
like,
before. I've wondered what that. Yeah.
yeah, it was crazy. I didn't know that could happen. I was like, "Whoa, so your skin really holds that in?" He goes, "Yeah, that's how your muscles stay, hydrated and stuff." And so they were really worried about it. And so I had a sitter in my room, and after a while, they put this tube with oxygen, and it kind of had a little monitor by the mouth to make sure, because my vitals were kind of not so good at that time. And my first surgery was a success. I got skin grafted, and my body started holding fluids, and I was progressively getting better. Um, it wasn't but a month later I had another scare in there. I was, man, that one I'll never forget. I was laying in bed and I had my right arm, which took most the brunt of the impact right here. Um, I was laying there, and the doctor's coming in to check my gauze, and she grabs my hand and she's like, "Can you feel that?" And I'm like, "Oh, wait, no, I can't." And she goes, "I'll be right back." It was a freaking army of white coats is in there looking at it. They're on gauze and they're pulling everything off that I have. My arm's just purple, bro. And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And they're like, "That means it's not getting any circulation." First 2 hours was them trying to find a pulse. The next hour was them talking about possibly amputating my arm. And I was devastated. I was like, "Dude, I can never be normal after this. Like, I'm gonna be missing my arm. Like, this sucks." Thank God for this nurse pulling in the machine. It was the same machine you kind of check the pregnant woman with, like sonogram machine.
Mm.
And she was like right up in this area, and she stopped and she was like, "Hold on, guys." She did push some buttons, and she's like, "That's blood flow right there. Don't take it." So they're like, "What do you want to do?" They're like, "We're gonna get him a special pillow. We're gonna prop it up. It might have been too flat, and we'll see how they did." So they brought me this like wedge looking thing, and I had to keep my arm up on it. About an hour later, I had color back in my fingernails, man, and I'm like,
How
disaster
does how
averted,
does
bro.
propping it up help blood flow?
I have no idea.
That's
I'm not a
wild.
doctor.
Yeah.
It was flat on the bed, and so I guess I guess what the terms would be is my body's already got kind of poor circulation because I'm so burned everywhere,
Sure.
65%. So I guess your body really struggles to get that blood kind of going at a normal thing that somebody normal would have, and so I guess propping it up kind of helps
Gotcha.
keep it going through in a way. It was weird. Whatever they did, it worked, and I was like, "Dude, I was crying. I was like, oh my God." And I had happy tears. At first it was sad tears. And I was like, it sucked. And it was one of those battles, man. It goes back to mental toughness, right? To where I was screwed up mentally from this thing. Like, I couldn't watch anything with fire in it for like a good month. Like, it just brought back flashbacks. I was having nightmares. I was having flashbacks every night to where I didn't want to sleep. I was like, "Dude," and they're like, "Why are you still awake?" I'm like, "Because forcing myself to stay awake because I'm having so many flashbacks." And they brought somebody in to talk to me, and they pretty much were like, "It's normal. You're gonna have those." And they just asked me, "Are you happy? Are you sad? Like, how are you feeling?" I was like, "Dude, I'm depressed right now. Like, this sucks, man. I missed my prom. And I missed my graduation. I'm supposed to be class of 2009. That's out the window now. Like, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it out of here." Like, I was pretty bleak, and I was feeling pretty crappy at the time. And it was starting to intertwine because after a while I started walking and they started trying to get me up out of bed to learn to walk again to where I wasn't just, they were like, you don't want to walk today? I'm like, no, I don't feel like doing it. And I don't know what it was. It's like finally I was laying there and this doctor was like, hey, if you don't do your stretches and walk, your body's going to heal that way and your tendons won't bend right. So you're not going to walk right. You won't be able to use your arm correctly. And finally, it was like, whatever, you just, you don't know what I'm going through type of thing. And next day was the same thing. I remember the OT team was working with me, right? And I had to walk down this hall. I got like a quarter of the way and I just didn't want to go. And finally, the doctor was like, all right, he doesn't want to do it. Like, we can't force him. He doesn't have to do it. And so he's like, yeah, you probably will never be able to walk down to the end of that hall. And that pissed me off.
That snapped you out of it.
Okay. I was like, all right, guy, you want to play games? And the next day they came in and I was sliding out of bed. And they were like, oh, you're ready? And I'm like, let's do this. And so I walked down that hall, made a left, another freaking like mile long, and I made it out to the helipad where they brought me in. And they're like, this is the farthest you ever walked. And so I was like, yeah, don't tell me nothing. I can't do something. You know, it's like, no, I can do it. Just don't tell me I can't do it. You know what I mean? And so after that, it was like, it sparked something in me to like keep pushing more. And mind you, when I'm walking, I have my legs stapled all the way down to my ankles. And so it was hard. It was tough. You know, I'm stapled all over my stomach and my back. And I kept pushing myself. And they're like, oh, is it far enough? You're bleeding a little bit. I said, no, let's go farther. Let's keep going. And I started doing the difficult things, the arm bending, the freaking trying to get my motion back. And I'm stapled up. And I was like, dude, I'm going to get out of here. And so 4 months later, man, after celebrating my birthday in there and everything, they said, hey, you got your ticket to go home. Unfortunately, that wasn't going home. It was going to a rehabilitation hospital. And it was like, we got to do rehab. We got to do stretches. They got to make sure you're going to function normally at home. And so once I got there, I was like, I hated being there. It was like a bunch of old people. But I do have a cool story about that rehabilitation. It was down in Scottsdale. It's called Health South. And as I'm working out, I'm on a Stairmaster, and I'm just pushing myself. Like, doctor comes up, he's like, you only had to do 5 floors, and I'm like 15. I was like, nah, dude, I'm going. He's like, all right, well, keep going, dude. Like, this is your workout time, so I'm going. And he finally comes over, he taps me, and goes, look to your left hand side. And I'm like, what? And there's a guy on a bicycle that's next to me. I look over, and it was, at the time, it was Ali, the boxer. That's where he did his rehabilitation.
No way.
He goes, that's the people's champ. And I looked at him and he just smiled, and dude, it was cool. And I was like, holy moly. But it was weird, man. I looked at that man with the disease that he had could push himself to go in, do his exercises, then I should have no problem doing them. So yeah, man, it even fired me up even more. Like, I was in my room to where I finally got the little band to walk around by myself around the hospital. I didn't have a fall risk anymore. I was in my room on the wall doing push-ups. Like, I was like, dude, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this. And so finally the doctor, he came in one day and he was like, whoa, doing push-ups again. He goes, yeah, I figured. He goes, hey man, here's this. And I look at him like, discharge papers. And my parents came around the corner, like, we're taking you home. He's like, you don't need to be here for the few months that they wanted you, man. I think you've done enough to go out. He was just keep doing that when you get home. And so coming back after almost 6 months of that accident happening was like, well, this is where I almost lost my life. Like, holy crap. It's wild how life can change, bro. Like, it literally, and I thought I had a bad day, but I don't have a bad day anymore. Like, things might go wrong, but that day was truly like an actual bad day. I was like, dude, yeah, I thought I had a bad day before those days. That nothing will compare to that. And so that kind of changed my mentality from there on to like push through hard situations, that, you know, everything is temporary no matter what you're going through in life. Like, that injury, it was temporary. There was always going to be tomorrow that I'm going to push through. I'm going to get through. I'm like, this is not where I'm going to be stuck at. It's temporary. I'm going to get through it.
Well, first off, like, thanks for sharing that story. There's so many lessons in that, but like, what you just said is what I would love to highlight to whoever's like listening. If I have any thing to add to this is like how quickly things can happen, and and so extremely innocently too. Like
Yeah.
you're not like you're messing around trying to get yourself into trouble, you know, like so many people are, and they get into a situation that they can't get out
Yeah.
of, and they hurt themselves or worse. This is literally like, hey, I just, you know, I see a hazard. You're going to go try and prevent the thing from happening, and it happens, and just, you know, very, very innocent. But like, if you take that, you just take that into the industry and in the jobs that we do on the daily basis, how quickly something can happen when you're not
Yeah.
cut in, right? When you're not, when you're not thinking through each and everything that you're doing. And I'm sure you still see a lot of this sort of stuff, but that's like a crazy lesson, man. Like a hard lesson to learn. How much of your body ended up burned?
65%.
Where are they taking skin from to put that on you?
So good question. I love that. So I had two options. My mom volunteered herself for the first one, and they said that with her it'd be hard because the match wouldn't match right. And then they said, well, he's got two options. Either we can take it from what's left of his thighs, which wasn't very much, and part of his back, and that's what extended my hospital stay, right? So if I would have went, the first option of was cadaver skin, and I absolutely disgusted me. And they said you can get infections from it, you can inject, you can contract something from it. I didn't want it. I was like, cadaver skin. They're like, yeah, we have a skin bank. You know, we usually clean it up pretty well, and it'll take with you can find a match. Or the second one is it's going to extend your stay by quite a bit as we take it from you in the small areas that we have. And I said, I will just take the second option of extending my stay. And so I had to go through a lot of that, and that hurt too with them doing my donor sites. Like that was worse than being on fire, especially when you had to go in for the cleanings. Oh my God, the cleanings were my least favorite part of the day. But yeah, that's where they pulled skin from, because I was like thinking about it. My parents like, it's up to you. These are the options. I was like, I'm not taking a cadaver skin. No offense. Like I know there's people out there that they donate themselves to be there for somebody, but I was like, yeah, I'll just take my own. I do have a little bit to give. Yeah, I'll just get through it and not have any bad outcomes from it.
How old are you at this point?
At this point, I am 33.
No, at this point of
Oh,
like where when
oh
this
yeah, I was
happened.
like seven. I was 17, and I spent my 18th birthday in there.
How like I'm super curious on like where your mental toughness comes from. Like there's so many things that can happen coming out that you see happen coming out of this sort of thing where people get, you
Yep.
know, they spiral downhill, and they spiral downhill in so many different ways. And a lot of, like one of those ways is becomes addicted to, you know, painkillers, drugs, whatever, booze to get through the pain after. Like how are you doing
Yep.
this at 17, 18 years old?
It's funny you bring that up. So while I was in a hospital, when I was getting close to getting out, they actually had to dim down my morphine and all like the addictive drugs and see that I could be okay without it. What they didn't know is by month two in there, a lot of the doctors knew, but some they were getting new guys in there and stuff they didn't know is I didn't want morphine. I didn't want any pain meds. There would be times where they're cleaning me, I'm like, hand me a sponge. And I started taking off my gauze myself, and they were like, whoa. This one doctor, I'll make an example. This one doctor came up from the trauma unit. She was filling in that day at the burn unit. And she said, I want you to click your morphine button. I was like, I don't want morphine. You need it because we're going to clean it. I don't want it. You need to take your morphine. I was like, I'm not taking it. Hand me my towel. I help you guys clean because it's freaking cleaning in the bed. Like, I'm going to do it. I know what I'm doing. I've done it before. She went out and told my dad, he's not taking his meds. My dad comes back. Do you want meds? Nope. He goes, he doesn't want them. You can't make him take it. And so she starts cleaning. She's like, well, it's going to hurt. And after a while, we're cleaning. She's like, you're barely fidgeting and moving. I'm like, yeah, it's just you become almost adapted to the pain to say you just become so used to it to where it's like, all right, yeah, it hurts. It's uncomfortable, but we'll get through it. And coming down off the meds, it was no big deal for me. Like I had aches and pains and stuff, but you know, it's one of those things I was like, hey, the bigger rewards on the other side, I get the hell out of here and I can move on with my life. And so trying to do the walks and stretches without pain meds, it was like it sucked, but it is what it is at that point. Because I knew if I couldn't show that I was able to do it on my own without the pain meds and I was in too much pain, it would prolong the discharge. And so that's why I was like, just get through it. You have to.
Absolutely amazing. It's amazing how you like you chose to face it head on, like in your own head, you know, with your own mind and your own will.
Yeah.
Like, dude, commends like that. That's amazing story. When you come out of all this and you're finally home, what are you thinking? Like, what are you doing now? What are you doing? Are you thinking about going back to work? Are you thinking about chilling? What are you, you're excited now. You're
um,
stoked. You're home. Like now what?
Dude, I was stoked I was home. I'm not gonna lie, PTSD hit me pretty hard every time I went in that
No
backyard.
kidding.
It was replaying in my head, and it screwed me up. And I talked to a few buddies of mine, and I was like, why am I feeling this way? And I noticed that when going back out in public, I was starting to get triggers. I was like getting in big crowds. I started feeling weird, and I didn't know what the feeling was. I was like, dude, I feel like something bad's about to happen. Like I need to get out of here. I started feeling really like not myself, and I was like, something isn't right. And I was like, hmm. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go out with my friends. I'm gonna go hang out with them, and I would be okay. But then I would go to like to the store or to the mall, and I was like starting to get super anxious. And so finally, I was like, what is going on with me? Like, why do I feel this way? And I talked to a few people of mine that might have had any advice, and I ended up googling it. It was like, dude, that's PTSD. Like you have PTSD, and I kind of, unfortunately, I pushed it off to the side. I was like, I'm just gonna get through it. I kind of locked it up in the back of my mind, and little did I know that it was gonna still come back full force later in my life. I guess I'll add to that is later in my life, I almost got blown up again. I was working for a civil contractor, and my job was I was a project superintendent. I was the assistant on it, and we had a blue stakeout, guys digging off the mark where he's supposed to be. We just had 811 out there. Southwest Gas came out. So yeah, your gas line's right here. We seen the valve box. Like cool. He's digging, and I'm watching, and we had a spotter right there. He's digging down, and I'm like, yeah, we need to make this trench. And as I'm looking, I'm like, hey, we need to make this trench go over there, and then we'll start sloping everything down in this drainage ditch. As I did that, he came in contact with the 2-inch gas line. I got blown back from it, blew my hard hat off, blew my glasses off. I see gas spewing everywhere. Operator killed the rig, jumps up, grabs me, and I'm being dragged. And I'm like, and I just got a face full of natural gas. Like it burned, like it was so cold. It was weird, dizzy, disoriented. That opened up a whole set of demons that I had locked away after that. Like, yeah, I fought through some pretty bad mental stuff later in my life that I didn't even know was possible.
I can't even imagine. Did did you kind of like you walked away from that with like
Yeah,
besides the mental trauma, like
yeah, I was fine. Like I was good. I got up, and like the first thing I asked, I said, "Where's my crew? Where's my crew?" And the operator's like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "Dude, where's the crew? Where's the spotter?" And the kid's like, "I'm good. I'm over here." And I was like, "All right, call 911. Everybody get away. We need to get that building. We're right next to the building. Get them evacuated." So it was a little like might have been too much, but the guy in the building wasn't understanding. Like, there's a gas leak, and I could smell it coming in. So I pulled the fire alarm. And I'm like, dude, that'll get everybody to evacuate because there's so many rooms to go through. And mind you, this is like a military installation in some of those places. I don't have the authority to just walk in there. So I pulled the alarm, and the tech sergeant was standing there, and I pulled the alarm. And he was like, oh, fire. And I was like, yeah, dude, you got to get out. And he starts smelling. He was like, oh, good call, good call. So they started rendezvousing and getting everybody out of there. And yeah, and I, actually coming off of that, we investigated it, and I looked in there. There was no tape or nothing, and that guy marked the line wrong, and that was one wrong mark could have, and a spark could happen. They would have toasted both of us and the operator. Like it would have been good.
you seem to be somebody who keeps a pretty level head under, you know, in the situation, like in the middle of it, in the thick of it.
Yeah, it. I don't know where I get it from. I don't know why, but like shit hits the fan, and I'm like, all right, don't freak out because that causes more panic. So I'm like, I'm gonna rush. I'm gonna get over there and tell this guy to evacuate the building. And I've had times where that stuff's happened at work, and everybody's like, I'm like, relax. get this person healed. Like I've had guys cut their fingers off and the person's panicking. I'm like, stop. You freak that person out. Just get them bandaged up, just get them down, keep them calm. And we'll get them situated. And I don't know where I get that from, but it's just like my natural instinct is to just chill out, think, and get through all the chaos that's going on.
It's good advice for people too, though, in situations like that. The more that you can keep a level head and think through, like almost step back, think through what you need to do in the moment and put everything else aside and just get done what needs to get done. There's like, I hear guys like Jocko and like military guys talk about this, especially because, you know, when shit hits the fan, you can't be the guy that's just like screaming on the radio, and like you need to almost talk clear, concise, give direction, give order, you know, kind of be focused. And that's a hard thing to train when you're talking about, because they train for it, but it's a hard thing to train in industry. But I've mentioned this on other podcasts before, where if you can just like almost like visualize things like that, like I said, I don't know where you got that from, and I'm not sure you know where you get it from. I was somewhat similar. I had a couple of incidences, like even right back to when I was 17, I was hit head on a highway by a drunk driver. I had people in the car. I was fine. Like I was somewhat fine, kept a level head, did what needed to get done, got people safe, helped people in C-spine, like just did the things that needed to get done in the situation. And like, it hit me later kind of thing. Right. But it's important for people I think an exercise you could do is even just like, not that you want to sit there and dwell and visualize on shit going wrong, but like if it did, what would you do and how would you handle the situation? It's almost like it's good to think of these things step by step through. And that's why like any safety training that you are going to get, and I want to talk about this with you as well, like any safety training you do get, when you go to that training course, don't just like throw your feet up on the table, pull your phone out and scroll Instagram while someone's trying to teach you first aid. Like pay attention, run through it. Like, you know, go through the exercises as if they're real life. I know they're simulated and it's a doll on the floor that you're doing CPR, applying CPR to. And so, but like the closer that you can make it and the more serious you can take that training, the better it's going to go for you if shit hits the fan. And your example is a clear example of like how quickly and innocently something can happen.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right on that, because I have guys like, I'm a safety guy and I'll do trainings, and I do get those guys that are like dozing off on the phone. And so like what I do to them is I'll tap them like, hey man, this guy just went down. He's bleeding. How are you gonna apply it? What are you gonna do to keep a tourniquet? We're going to like tourniquet training one time. We had this guy come in and he was teaching us how to use trauma packs, is what it was. And he was showing us the tourniquets and had a guy in the back and he's doing that. He's not. I'm like, all right, I got it. And the instructor kind of looks at me and I'm like, I got this. Tapped him and said, hey man, your buddy just went down. He's bleeding. Where are you gonna apply this tourniquet and how are you gonna do it? And he's like, I was like, come on, man. Time's ticking, dude. He's bleeding out. And I said, real life, this is what's going to happen. You have minutes to get pressure on that. How are you going to do it? And I said, you missed it, didn't you? And I said, dude, you guys are the ones in the field doing this work. I said, I am there, but if your brother goes down, you're going to be pretty much his savior there. And if you're not trained to help and use what's in that bag, it's useless. I was like, you can't. The point of this training is to give you the tools necessary to know how to utilize them, so that way when shit hits the fan, and I always tell myself, and it will, might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but you will in your lifetime have something go wrong, so where that person might be depending on you. And I was like, you can't always depend on 911. You get in a desolate area, medics are 20, 30 minutes out, and that trauma kit's all you have. You need to know what to do to help and, you know, pay attention to it. You know, it's like, I know it's redundant. I know it's, nobody wants to listen to someone blab, but I'm like, dude, we're showing you how to utilize these tools and stuff. And it's, even if you have this training 30 times before, and I do this too because I've worked with volunteer fire departments, train for the worst and hope for the best, right? You know, and that's what I tell them. I said, well, you keep on training because you're going to get that repetitiveness in. And hey, if you had this 30 times before, well, guess what? You got it 31 times, and that just made you 31 times better. than you were before. Because I'm pretty sure the last few times you might have screwed up with the tourniquet or where to apply pressure or how to, do proper chest compressions. And so I always tell guys that, and I'm big on training. I love training like that. And it's like, I try to get these guys, into it. And after that, usually they'll be like, okay, you're talking real life stuff. And I'm like, yeah, man. So I come at you with the real stuff because I've seen shit happen personally that, trust me, when it goes bad in the field, you can't count on the safety guy always being there to, save the day. You are your brother's keeper. Your life is pretty much in each other's hands. And so until I get there and medics get there, you've got to be ready to utilize those tools that's in that bag. So,
yeah, and you're assuming that, like, speaking of the person, like, you're assuming that you're fine, right? Like you're okay too, right? But that's not necessarily the case. Like, maybe you were involved in the same freaking explosion and you're a little less hurt than your buddy, but you're still rattled, you're dizzy, you're, got sore parts, whatever, but you're the best case that guy's got to live. And now you got to get your shit together and execute on something that you sucked at and weren't paying attention to. Like, or the scenario could be, it's you alone. Like, it might not be you at work. It might be you after work. And I had Bryce Hubbard on the show a couple of times. Bryce texted me a month or so ago, and he was like, buddy, you take your safety home with you every night. And I was like, yeah, you do. What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? And next text that came in, he's like, last night I brought a 2-year-old back to life after they fell in the pool and they were dead. They were gone. They were drowned. And I was around the corner. I got that kid out of the pool, 2 years old, maybe even 18 months, 2 years old. And I brought him back, and he's like, you take your safety home with you. And I'm like, freaking right. So you do, you take your training home with you, man. That might, like, wasn't his kid, somebody else's kid. You saved that kid's life. And so you're thinking, like, best case scenario is like, you're fine. And, you do this not just for your guys beside you, you do this for life, man. This is something you take with you. Yeah. So take it serious.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've used my first aid a couple of times on accidents on the way to work. I had one where it was a motorcyclist. He was standing out, and I'd seen him. I was like, oh no, that's a motorcycle in a car. People are running around, and I'm like, let me see if there's anything I can do. And the first thing that somebody shouted, believe it or not, was, does anybody have a first aid kit? And I had a trauma kit in the truck. I said, yep, right here. I grabbed it. I'm walking up, and they were like, he's not breathing. And then finally someone's like, yeah, he's breathing. We had another guy who was kind of like, he had somewhat medical training. I don't know where he came from. He's like, oh, he's got a pulse. He's breathing. He's coming back. And they started trying to pick him up. And I was like, no, don't pick him up. Because he has a neck injury. You're not supposed to move him. And then they're like, he's bleeding really. Even the guy's like, my ankles, and he's starting to bleed out. He has white shoes, and so there's blood coming out. And so got my gloves on, got my shears, cut up his pant leg. And I was like, all right, man, this might hurt a little bit. I'm gonna get some pressure on this thing real quick. Is that all right with you? He's like, yeah. So I grab it, got the blood stopper kit on it, put it on him, and they're talking to him. And I said, that's good. Keep talking to him. Ask him if he knows what day it was and where he's at and stuff. He wasn't wearing a helmet. And so at that time, he's kind of mixed up on his day. So I'm like, oh, he's trauma. I said, anybody call 911 yet? And there's a lady that was a caregiver around the corner. She's on the phone 911. So I was like, hey, give me that phone. So finally, I'm using what little experience that I have in training. I'm like, hey, I've got a male over here down, no helmet's going to be a car versus motorcycle. And I was like, just be advised, he's going to be trauma. I was like, either ask him what day it is. He's scooped up on his day. He's not sure what his name is. And they're like, 10-4, we're going to send a trauma unit out. And they're like, good, that's good. And they're like, hey, do you mind staying on the phone with us? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to put you on speaker. I'm trying to patch up. He's bleeding on his ankle right now. And it's like, he's got obvious ankle injuries. It was obvious it was broken. It was pretty bad. And I was like, he's got a broken ankle that I can see. And so by then, fire department rolled up. Here comes the medics. And they're like, dude, thanks. And I'm like, hey, he's ready. I cut that thing. It's got pressure on that. No helmet, possible trauma. So get him to UMC. So it was stuff like that. You really do take it home because these are skills that at least I've and most guys out there in the field have gotten enough of them that they're pretty universal. You can use them almost anywhere. It might not, like I said, might not be at work. You might be driving down the road and something happens or a lady collapses in the store and you're like, hey, I know how to use an AED. grab it and start doing chest compressions. It's something to, definitely like take serious and, hone your skills on. Like, I don't mind being put through first aid class every year. I'm like, I do it and I'm like, hey, I'm just sharpening my skills because you just
Mm-hmm.
never know.
Yeah. 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 And it could be a family member. Um, I know why I see. I think I know why you got into blue collar and into industry, obviously from your dad and from the work you did as a kid. Um, but how did that progression go? Like for you into industry, into safety in the industry? How did that go?
So I started out, I was on the end of the shovel. And I tell guys that all the time. They're like, what college did you go? Did you go to a college? I'm like, no, dude,
College hard
I started
knocks.
it. Yeah, pretty much, man. I was like, I'm shovel certified,
Yeah.
I was like, I spent very many days in a ditch in 120-degree weather, helping install utilities, helping, gas companies out. And I started as just a low guy in a totem pole. Actually, after I was gotten the clearance to heal up for my burns, that's the first job I got. I was a laborer at like 18 and almost 19 years old. I was like, I'm going to do something. And so it was paying well. Got in there, started as a grunt pretty much on the freaking civil crew, and got there. I had a hard ass superintendent, and I actually thank him for being that way. Because not a lot are anymore, but he was super tough to work with. Like, this dude was old school, told you how he felt, and you either were doing what he told you to do, or you're just heading back to the house, and there was just no room for you. And so got out there and I was like, what do you need me to do? And the lady's like, you're going to be on William Brown's crew, civil crew. I'm like, and the other guy's like, good luck, man. Met him and he's like, get your shit, get in the truck, let's go. All right, cool. Yes, sir. Here we go. Started just doing what he did. And he was pretty tough. He'd look at you, hey, man, I need you to get the fuck down and get the shit out. All right. Some guys are like, I don't like being talked to that way. I'm like, I don't see anything wrong with it. He's just straight to the point. So after a while, he said, hey, man, you ever run equipment? No, sir. Cool. You're going to run this skid steer. I'm going to show you how. Got on there. He's like, rule number one, always look before you reverse. That's my number one thing. Otherwise, I'll kick you off this and you're not going to operate anything anymore. Learned how to operate it, started doing equipment operations, and started running through the ranks. And I was working with a cool safety guy at the time. And bless his heart, the rest is soul, man. He passed away a few years ago. He taught me everything I know. Mike started teaching me, and he said, "Hey, man, I want you to get your OSHA 30." I'm like, "The hell's that?" Like, what's an OSHA 30? He's like, "It's all the rules and regulations and stuff. It'll be beneficial to you. It shows you how to be safe on the job, things you should look out for." And got out of that class, and I was like, "Dude, I am doing so much unsafe shit that I'm like, whoa." Like, when they touched on excavation, I was like, dude, I was in a freaking 8-foot trench the other day real quick because I had to tamp that thing down. I'm like, I was supposed to have a dang, I didn't realize like some of the dangers I was putting myself in. And I was like, that's interesting. So I came back. He's like, how'd you like it? I was like, dude, there's a lot that we could work on here. And I think, as a whole. And so that was an unforeseen path for me. And I started getting a passion for it. And I didn't care that I was in charge of guys. I didn't care that I didn't want the power. I was in it to pretty much make sure everybody went home the way they came to work. And that's the only reason I got into it. I was like, dude, we're using the wrong stuff out here. We're using the wrong gas cans out here. I don't want to see someone get hurt. I want to see someone get burned or something. I ended up in a position I ended up in. And so, yeah, started from there, started getting my certs on my own. A couple companies paid for them. And I've been all over, man. I've been in the iron industry. I've been in the civil side. And I've been on the high voltage electrical side for a little while now, which I absolutely look up to those guys out on the power lines, man. It was one of the industries, man, where I respect the hell out of those guys because will not find another guy out there willing to do the work that those guys do day in and day out, beating your body up like that, hanging on some pole in the middle of nowhere, trying to restore power, or just changing out a pole, and you're in the middle of the elements, right? It's like,
Yeah.
being with those guys. It's awesome.
When I talk to a lot of people about like what we do as line workers, a lot of blue collar industries are, there's lots of hazards in the industry, right? But it seems like line work has all of the hazards. like
Yeah.
all of
Oh
them,
yeah.
like you got the
Oh yeah.
elements, whether it's hot or cold or whatever. You've got traffic, you've got heavy equipment, you've got electricity, heights, like the list goes on and on and on. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's
It,
amazing. Like you said, you
it,
gotta really
it
hand it.
is. You have to, because like I said, I worked in the iron industry. Like iron workers, they have a dangerous job too. But most of the time, once those guys get the frame up, they're decked in. They're tied off. The rigging's good. But when you're going in line work and you're knowingly messing with already an energy that you have to get close to, that in itself is already like
Mm-hmm.
dangerous. And now, yeah, you're working up at heights, and then you got to sling something up. Now you got loads coming in. You got to disconnect stuff and make sure everything's dead on one end, and you're digging trenches or you're running underground. And sometimes all that's happening, like for the things I'm dealing with, like I've got all at once. I've had the substation stuff going on. I have the underground stuff going on. And so you have a very volatile environment. And so it's very crucial for these guys, to make sure that they're really watching out for one another. And that goes for myself. Like I might be walking around. I don't want to put myself behind a piece of equipment or steel being erected above for the substation, or they might be lifting up transformers and stuff and trying to set them. And you really do have it all with the high voltage side of things.
When you get really close to something, like when you get really close to something, it's hard to see everything. So I'm curious from your perspective, because you're not from this industry directly, and you're not like a lineman that's got it. You're super close to the thing you're doing every day, day in and day out. Is there anything that you've noticed in particular that's like, hey, that's something that we could work on, and no judgy, no nothing, just like, no BS. This is literally something line guys could work on the daily to try to get better at?
It's probably complacency. I see that a lot, and that's a lot of these guys' attitudes, unfortunately. And I try to snap them out of it. They'll be like, "Oh, I've done this before," and I'm like, "You do it a million times. All it takes that one time to go south, and that ruins everything." And
Yeah, you picked up a gas can a
I,
million times before, right? And it took the one time.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I tell them that. I said, "Dude, I've dealt with things a million times. Look, I'm burned. It just takes that 1 second, that one time that you might have cut in that corner or gotten complacent around it, and it bites you, and you don't know if you're still going to be here, or you might not get you, might get the guy next to you." And that's one thing I do see, and I try to make sure that some of the tasks like are redundant. Like I'll use an example, like pulling wire is redundant, but you always want to watch what you're doing, right? You always want to make sure you're out of the line of fire, or you're watching your walking working paths. It's easy to keep doing the same thing over and get complacent with it, and so it's like, and I get it. Some of these guys are like, "Oh, I just came from another project where we had to trench and do this and do that." And I'm like, I get it, but let's act like this the first time, and you haven't done it a million times, and go through the motions and make sure our stuff's properly filled out. We got our redress in there. We're watching out for any fissures and cracks. What depth are we at? And if we do see something, let's make sure we're getting our guys out of the way. And I said, because this shit will collapse. And I was like, we need to plan for the worst and hope for the best type of situation. So really look at what can go wrong. Make sure you have everything in there. And this is where people really look at me sideways, and I love it, because I said, shit's gonna go wrong. That's just what happens. Sometimes you can have every check mark off that list that you checked it, and sometimes shit just goes wrong. But the fact of the matter, we have all of our stuff's in check, or all our EPZs are checked out, all of our stuff is in place. So when it does go wrong, we kind of have those barriers there. So when failure happens, we're protected, because it is going to happen. And people, how many times I make corporate people's heads explode with that. They go, whoa, it's not going to happen. I'm like, that's an unrealistic look, sir. I'm sorry, but why do we wear this? Because something is probably going to go wrong. Why do we do this? Because something's probably wrong. So we're planning for a failure, essentially. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and making sure that we have all of our guards up, so that way our men out there, our crews, are protected from it when it does go south.
Yeah.
So, and I try to preach that to my guys, and 9 out of 10 times when you get it to see it that way, they go, "You're probably right, huh?" And I'm like, yeah, I've seen the perfect lift plans go south. I've seen the perfect trenches somehow just collapse. I'm like, and know what helped those guys? Having the safeguards in place and having all their stuff done, you know. So then that's what I try to tell them, especially again with complacency, they'll go down through the THA and they just, yep. And I'm looking and I'm going, well, this is checked off, but you don't have an egress point. This is checked off. And I'm like, hey, your spoils are not that far off the trench, or hey, you know, we're supposed to walk out, tag out that thing. We need to make sure this is done. Is this isolated on that end? Type of thing. And they're going, oh yeah, yeah. And I'm like, see, don't get caught up in that mindset, man. We need to be walking this thing like it's the first time every time. And that's what keep them on their toes.
It's tough, like, especially for the seasoned line guys. It's hard to, and I'm sure you've noticed this in probably all industries that you've worked in, the stigma around the safety guy, right? Like the safety guy,
Yeah.
oh, look out, the safety guy's got our number. He's gonna try to catch us for something. It's nice to see people that in the safety realm, in the safety world, that are trying to do things a little different. They're trying to approach it from a real way and not just try to catch a guy for not wearing their safety glasses or whatever the thing is, right? Like it's the other stuff. Like those are important as well. Safety glasses are very important, but it's like, it's the other things too. Like the little things, like I'm glad you said complacency, because complacency is super, super important. That's what it's like when you get too close to something, right? You get too close to it.
Yeah.
You get complacent. It's that thing you've done on repeat 1,000 times or more. And it's that 1,001. It was that one time you did a slightly different thing, and it's caught so many guys. Those guys that have, you know, that have got caught in induction ground or something. You know what I mean? Like held on to a guy wire that was also on the ground and grabbed that jack on that ungrounded line and put themselves in series, or, you know, put themselves in series as they were making a connection. And, you know, that day they didn't test their gloves because, you know, they were good yesterday, but today they're not. And they caught it. You know, whatever the scenario is, complacency is something that is going to get guys if they're not paying attention to it. I'm glad you said that, because that's a good one to drive home for us.
Yeah, and you know, I get this a lot. I'm not the typical guy. And I mean, you're right. The stigma is real. Like they see me show up on site. Like I work for a utility contractor, and the first time I came out there, they're like, well, safety guys here. When I went through my interview with the people I'm employed with now, they said, how do you discipline? And I said, I don't. What? I said, I don't discipline. I coach and I mentor. And I was like, I like to teach these guys something and a different thing. I don't like the word discipline. I don't believe in discipline. I'm not going to slap your hand because you didn't have your safety glasses on. I said, I'm not out there to get violations. If I want to get violations and get people on stuff, I go work for highway patrol. I don't want to be a cop. I want to make sure generally that these guys can continue to perfect their craft, fill their money with, fill their pockets with money, keep making their checks, and make it to the next project and make it back home ultimately to their family safely. That's why I got in this. And they just look at me like, I haven't thought of it that way. And I'm like, yeah, I don't discipline anybody. Like I could walk up to any guy in my crew and say, hey man, I know they'll fully listen. They're like, oh, what are you wrong? I'm like, no, nothing did wrong. So look at this. What do you think could happen between here and here? And I kind of start getting them involved. And they're like, oh, right, I didn't. Yeah, I'll get right now. Cool. I'm like, I'm not going to bust your balls about it. Hey, we get along. And I've gotten, not coming from this industry, I have some really good JLs out there that I'm friends with now that I made another family. They're teaching me things, dude. And I love to learn. Like, dude, I am out there in the field all day. I love it when they're like, hey, this is like a fuse and this is how we hook this together. This is why we do that. I'm like, dude, I love that because it helps me understand your craft better. So when I see something, I'm not like, hey, what's going on here? And I love to ask questions. And so being out here all day, and corporates also like looked at them. They're like, you're never in your office. I'm like, no, I'm not with the guys. Like, this is where the work's happening. I love being with them, and I'm learning, and I'm seeing what they're doing on the day to day. Hey, what can we fix? What can we make better? And I'm learning this industry. And I told you, I was like, I had a knack for it, man. As soon as I like started getting up there, I was looking. I was like, man, what industry really lights that fire? And the line industry is something that was like, dude, look up to those guys. I think it's freaking awesome. And it's just a really, really neat industry to be in. And so when I had the moment to get on, I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to do it. And then here I am, and I try to make sure I'm a I'm easy to approach. I have guys coming to me, even grunts. I have grunts coming to me. Hey man, I'm filling this THA out. Can you help me with that? Like, I love doing this shit, man. Hell yeah, let's do it. And they get all into it. Like normally when we do tailboards, like they'll have like a journeyman or myself talking. I get the grunts involved. I'm like, let's get the new guys involved. Let's make sure the new guys out here understand the world they're about to enter, because all 60 of us know what's going on, but these three don't. And so let's get them involved. Let's get them in the tailboard. Let's get them in the safety meetings. So every week we get our safety topic, and I'll pick one of them. Like, hey man, come up and read this, and then I'll bounce off of it. Like, essentially, what that says is this, and so they're getting involved in that safety thing. It's not like here I'm going to do this. You stay over there. You just go to work. I'm like, no, I want to get everybody from top to bottom, bottom to top involved in this. So when we're doing these tailboards and they break off in their crews, I'm like, hey, have your apprentice do the THA, and let's see if they can name some stuff that's out there. And so when I'm attending these, I love it because the grunts, they'll be out there like, oh, I see this. I'm like, good, mark it on the list, man. That's legit. Like, let's get it out there. And it starts bringing everybody closer. And then even then, though, you'll have a seasoned lineman. I'll be like, hey, by the way, this is here too. And I'm like, cool. Now look, guys, we have a list of freaking hazards on there that we've all came up with. The new guys are involved in this process, which is great because now I know they're safe because we recognize the hazard. They know what they need to do, the steps they need to take to keep them safe. And we've also named a few additional ones. So everybody's a whole safe. And so that's the way I like to run things. I like getting everybody, even the smallest guy, and I tell everybody, safety is not just a safety man's job. It's everybody's job. It's everybody's has to look out for each other on this project. Everybody has to be like that. Like I said, I'm not out to get you that glasses. Like that's low hanging fruit. You're gonna have that on every job you go on. Like that, gloves and glasses are given, but it's like, hey, is this guy hooking this up wrong, or is he doing this lockout tag out wrong, or is he how his backhoe part too close, or maybe like pulling wire. It was pretty big gauge, and I said, hey, why are you guys doing that by hand, bro? Like it's pretty rocky terrain. Someone's gonna blow me out. Well, we don't have this. They're using a forklift. I'm like, let me fix that. You guys using a forklift for? Oh, we had to deliver a spool of wire. Cool. Bring this over here, grab the pulley. Now we're using a machine to do the work, and it makes it so much better on those guys too. I'm like, there. Now I'm not trying to impede your process, but now look, you're getting more done. It's much safer. Nobody's straining and straining themselves. And I'm like, I tell these guys, save your back. Because when you get up there in age, you'll have one back. Don't blow it.
It's like build relationships, and build trust. And it's like become a part of the crew essentially, right? Where they trust you and you have a great relationship with them, and they feel like they can go to you with things, with real questions, and they're not going to get a citation over it or get written up over, just asking you a legitimate question, right? That may or may not point out a fault.
Exactly.
When I was working and instructing, in training and instructing, I found like working with linemen was great. I love being around linemen. I love working with linemen. Instructing them was great. But like where I really found a lot of value was getting to the younger guys and girls that were like just coming into the trade, right? They're like sponges and they're so excited that they found this career in this industry, and they just want to get after it and get into it and learn. And that's where I found like a lot of value. And I'm sure, like we were talking a little bit beforehand, about the younger guys and girls. What do you find? I'm sure you get a lot of questions from them. What kind of advice are you giving them just coming into the industry, whether it's the line industry or industry in general? What are you telling them? What are you talking to them about?
So yeah, I get a lot of questions on that. I'll start at the line side first because I get a plethora still on younger guys that see my content. They're like, hey, how do I do this? So when you get into this industry and you're starting out, the best thing I can tell you is just absorb everything you can. Just have a good attitude and don't let your ego inflate. I see with some of these kids out here that your ego goes from here to here, and you give them the first taste of it, and like 2 weeks later, they think they know everything there is to know about it. And it'll get you in a pinch real quick because you start getting that ego and you're starting to think you know everything. You've done a few months in there, and all of a sudden you're putting yourself in a real bad spot because now you become complacent. Now you're not looking at anything where you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know everything that's going on. And it's really not a good attitude to have. Just sit back, learn, listen to your journeyman, that what they have to teach you, and ask questions if you don't understand. And that's the biggest one, is ask questions and don't be afraid. Like some of these guys will just, and I get it, they'll put their head down and go, yes, sir. And they're like kind of unfamiliar, like what they're doing. They're like, wait, I'm not sure. And it's like, dude, ask that. And that kind of falls back on my next one. And it's not saying all journeymen are like that, but some of these things from my perspective is these journeymen will get these grunts in and they don't want them. They're like, no, I like working on this. I don't want to train them. And they'll just say, go off and do this. Like, dude, you're not teaching them anything. Like, if you're going to take them under your wing, take them under your wing. Everybody started somewhere. Show them what you know. Show them how to do things right. Show them how to do it safely. And so one thing I always try to bring up when we get these new guys coming in is this might be the future that'll teach your kids one day. And if you taught them how to cut corners and not do it right, would you feel safe with that guy teaching your son or daughter how to do things? And they kind of go, I never thought of it that way. And I'm like, yeah, y'all have kids. What if they get in the line trade? And that guy right there, you're telling them it's okay to cut corners and do whatever. He's going to teach them that habits. Would you want that, knowing that was your son or daughter about to do that? And they go, oh, probably not. I'm like, all right, so teach them like they're your own, guys. Like, I know some of them, they don't want to listen, and you got to kind of get through them to a little bit and do it, but also make sure you're mentoring them, making sure they're set up for success and that they're being safe and that they not only know how to do their job right, but be safe. Because I've watched it a few times with other companies. They'll just, oh, yeah, great, got grunts. Here, go over there. Can you run a skid steer? Oh, kind of. Forward, back, yeah, bye. And I'm like, you just gave him a high-powered machinery, and now he's going to run it all over. Like, he's going to kill somebody, man. I'm like, we can't have that. Like, you're setting him up for failure, and it's not even his fault. He's just following orders from the journeyman. So, and I guess anybody, any industry would be just absorb what you got, ask questions, don't be afraid. And if you're not feel like you're getting trained right or getting mentored right, say something. Go find somebody out there that will. You got one career, you got one chance to learn something, and it's like, hey, if you're going to do something that's not willing to teach you, find somebody that will. Because there is guys out there that are just, they love it. I have a few guys on my crew now that they love taking these grunts in. They'll show them everything, and it's the way it should be. Like the journeyman will be standing there, and they're pulling wire. You show them, hey, this is how you pull wire. This is how you use the wire wheel. Okay, he's forklift trained. Cool, get on it, run it, and they'll look and some people are like, why is he standing out there? And he's like, he's doing it. He's letting the grunts get on it and training them the right way. That's perfect. He's mentoring them. He's watching them. He's making sure they're safe, showing them how to fill the inspection sheets out. Making sure they know the hand signals, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. So I've watched some of these guys come up so far, and I know a few that are going to top out soon, and it's cool to watch them, man. You see them when they first come in, and later on, you're like, man, they're getting far and they're doing a great job. So, especially for the line trade, don't be discouraged. It's hard to get in.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people say, hey, man, I'm just not getting in. The best advice I can give anybody, if you haven't already, get your CDL and your first aid. You get your CDL and first aid, they're going to call you. Because there's a lot of guys that'll come in and be like, I just want to be a groundman. What do you have? I've got an OSHA 10 and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, unless you have experience from another industry, another company that done line work, you're not going to get in. But if you come in and you're like, hey, I got my CDL, I got my first aid, I've got this OSHA 10, you're going to get bumped up on the books because they're like, dude, this kid's hot. We can use him because you're going to have to drive the bucket trucks, you have to drive the diggers, you're going to have to move those things. So that CDL is what makes it or breaks it for a lot of people. And don't be discouraged. I mean, I worked as a groundman for a little while out of Oregon. It took me forever to even get a tree call. Like, dude, it took me forever to get a tree call, and I've noticed, guys, you just got to stay persistent with it. Sign the books, keep trying, especially if you're a young single person that can travel, you're going to have to. If you really want it. I know guys that came from Florida over to Arizona because Florida wasn't calling anybody. I know guys from here that went to Georgia because they needed a CDL driver that was a groundman. And I'm like, you just go out there, man. Sure enough, they packed up their truck, took the call. And
it says something about you as well, right? And that's what I like about, that'd be one of the first questions I ask somebody showing up too. Is like, how long you been trying to do this for? And if that guy's like, oh man, I've been trying to get in this trade for like 3 years or 2 years or whatever, I'd be like, oh yeah, where have you gone? What have you done? And you start talking to them a little bit about that, and you find out they got a bit of a history of trying, like working their ass off to get in the industry. I'd be like, okay, this kid wants it a little bit more, right? I'd be more willing to hire that person than the guy that's just fluked out and got in the industry, right? And that was the piece I was going to add about what you said. I love that, like the journeyman coaching the apprentice, right? Like, or taking that person under the wing and like guiding them through, like, but it's a two-way street. And I think what's happened is there's a lot of, grunts and apprentices out there that aren't respecting the position that they're in. I don't know, for whatever reason, they're not there for the right reasons. And those guys are the ones ruining it for the rest of them. And a large reason why journeymen are like, forget this, I don't want to deal with these guys, because they've consistently been given morons that just aren't performing. They're not there for the right reasons, and their attitude sucks. Maybe they do have that CDL and that first aid ticket, but their attitudes are trash. So any of you guys that are listening out there and you're an apprentice, like, check the freaking attitudes. And I know it's a two-way street, but who's the bigger person?
It's a perfect thing you said that. I love that you said that, because on one of my previous jobs, man, I had this apprentice, and even I knew it was like, dude, that's not a good attitude. He came in with just like, he wasn't there for the right reasons, and he was given a journeyman attitude, and the guy was getting kind of fed up with it. I'm like, dude, run him off to the house, send him back to the hall, bro. Like, talk to somebody about it, talk to the GF about it. And he was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And he handed him off to somebody else. Finally, he got this big freaking, like, bald-headed, mean dude. And the guy's a good dude. He's a big journeyman. And then the first time that apprentice popped off, he said, well, if you don't want to learn you nothing, and you can't seem to come out here, and you're just here to be here, well, guess what? Pack your crap, head to the trailer. He called the GF. He's like, I want him off my job. I don't want him anymore. And it kind of woke him up at that point, because he had taken that walk of shame back to the trailer. He was kind of like, okay, kind of put him back in reality. Now it's like that thing about the ego. It was like, he wasn't bad when he first came in, but he started kind of getting rubbed off on some bad things and hanging out, getting some bad attitudes that were around him. And it kind of was like, don't pay attention to these people. Don't let them toxicate you with that toxic attitude. Because I'm like, I knew the kid wasn't, but I'm like, he wasn't shaking either. So I'm like, maybe you need a good dose. And I've also been that guy that sometimes when I was younger, like, I'll never forget it. One day I was in it for a while, and my superintendent was trying to tell me something. I said, I know, I got it. And he goes, oh, great. He threw the prints at me. He goes, cool. Where's that gas main crossing over here? And how deep is it? How big is it? And I was like, I'm scrambling. He goes, you thought you knew everything, and he's cursing me out. He goes, I thought you effing knew everything. He goes, see, if you're not going to learn and take direction, then I don't need you here. And it kind of like humbled me. I was like, yes, sir, you're right. You're absolutely right. I was like, settled my ass back down. And I was like, and some of these groundmen and grunts out there need that. And it's like, hey, if that doesn't, then maybe you just don't need to be here. Like, because there's other people that are waiting that want it more than you do, and they want to be here, and they're willing to work their butts off and take that direction. And yeah, attitude's a big thing. Just show up. Like I said, have a good attitude. It's hard work. You're going to work your butt off, but also you're going to get into a very promising industry. It's one of those industries that it's going to provide a good life for you in the long run. And you're going to learn all kinds of new stuff. You're going to have a second family, and it's worth it, and just, have bad days, you have good days. Bad days are the jails all over your ass, just tearing you up for no good reason. You're like, whatever, just take it with a grain of salt, let it go. We've all been there. I've been there myself, and just keep putting forward, keep that mental toughness, keep doing good in the apprenticeship, and one day you're gonna get that ticket, and you're gonna top out, and all that is just gonna be totally worth it. It's gonna be good memories too, because you'll most of the time see those guys out of line like, hey, remember that time you were chewing my ass for this? And then you're like, it's crazy, because you'll see that. It's awesome. It's an awesome thing, bro. And attitude's the biggest thing, even for me, even for a safety guy, right? Because I have to have a good attitude come to work, because obviously no one wants a salty safety guy out there with him. And that's why, some of these guys, they don't like me just because I'm safety, but usually after they learn what I'm about and who I am, they're like, he's not so bad. And I'm like, I have a good attitude. I'm like, hey, I don't let anything really fluster me up. And even if guys are yelling at me and they're not happy, I'm there. I'm like, hey, sorry, buddy. I'm here. You know, say what you want, but I'm here, and try to build that relationship there and essentially be one with the crew. You know what I mean? It's like you have to. You're able to communicate more on that level.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I've loved this conversation. Is there anything else? I got a couple more questions for you, but is there anything else that you was burning on your heart to talk about that maybe we didn't get to?
No. That biggest one about my accident and mental toughness, and pretty much just anybody going through hard times in their life, it's temporary, no matter what it is. And I've been through the dumps before with my burns. I've lost both of my grandparents. One of them was murdered. I've lost some good buddies, but everything's temporary. And just keep that mental focus and just keep on building that persistence. We'll all get through it. And it's just one of those things, man. It's life, bro. Life is one of those roller coasters. You don't know what she's gonna hand you, but you just gotta dig in and get through it. And like I said, I'm no perfect person. I was in the dumps when I was in the hospital for a while. I was feeling sorry for myself until that doctor told me I couldn't. And I was like, all right, watch me now. I am going to do it. So it was like, I've been there. I've battled my demons. I still continue to this day battling demons. And it's life. You just got to get that mental toughness and keep on pushing through it, and things will get better, and everything's temporary.
Love that. Love that. If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
One thing about the industry, man, that's a tough one right there. It's, it's probably management, right? And some of these management things that they're driving these guys so freaking hard to get things done sometimes that they're putting them in a bind. And I wish that we could go back and be like, hey, let's not do that, because now you're rushing these guys to hurry up and get stuff done. And that's when we start making mistakes. And I've looked at it time in and time out. I've been with different companies. I've done different industries. It's always tied to the management, the PMs and corporate guys running the project and stuff. And I'm like, dude, we gotta hurry. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not the one out there having to do all that work. And you're telling them to hurry. You just set up a volatile atmosphere for them to cut corners and hurry up and get it done. I'm like, and I tell these guys all the time, I said, don't hurry. Do work diligently, right? Make sure you're not, grab assing all the time, but don't rush to where you have to cut corners and you're forgetting stuff. I was like, schedules can be fixed. Deadlines can be adjusted. Schedules can be adjusted. Budgets can be fixed. Somebody's life cannot be replaced. And that's what it comes down to, is that I will take life and limb and somebody's well-being over the sake of a schedule and getting things done. And I think that's the biggest toxic thing that I see with everything is life. I hate it. I'm like, guys, you want to have an industry or a safe record and stuff, but what's tripping you up is telling these guys, hurry up and get it done. We got to get it done now. And I'm like, yeah, that's what's causing them to trip over themselves, and that's not their fault. They're just doing what they're instructed to do. But I wish more people would get out in the field and see what these guys go through on the day, and it might change their attitudes a little bit.
Love that. Okay, one more. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be?
Oh man, any historical figure. And I love coffee too. I have to go get some after this. Coffee with any historical figure. Oh man,
dude, I've been geeking out on coffee lately. I don't know, for some reason I've been like on coffee Instagram and coffee Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got my wife teases me so much. She's like, you're such a girl, because side topic real quick. Me and my wife, before we met, I was a Monster Energy guy. Like, dude, I was drinking Monsters, Red Bulls, and then I met her. She's a Starbucks person. And so she's like, you should try coffee. It's more healthier for you. And after a while I did, and it was delicious. And so she teases me because every morning before I go to work, I've got to stop at Starbucks. I've got to get some coffee. I do have a couple, like I have an espresso here. I'm spoiled. Sometimes I don't want to make my own damn coffee. Yeah. So I'm like, I'll go to the coffee shop, grab it. She's like, "You're such like a basic white girl." I'm like laughing. I'm like, "Dude, what?" She goes, "Have to get your Starbies." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I have to have my coffee." But I got a couple, like I got like live wire coffee and stuff. They're really good. And espresso, but there's like some days where I don't feel like making coffee.
Yeah.
Dude,
I
don't want to make my coffee right now. I just want to grab my stuff, have somebody make it for me, and pay them a ridiculous amount of money and just get out of here.
Yeah.
Any historical figure. Oh my goodness, that one's got me mind boggled.
Living or past. Just anybody in general. Then we could go living or past. Who would you love to sit down and have coffee with?
Jocko Willink, actually. He's dude,
that's achievable.
A big part of my that guy's a big part of my day, man. I have so many books by him and Cam Haynes and
love Cam.
David Goggins, man. Yeah, dude, that's another guy. I'd love to meet Cam one day, man. Like, I read his book.
Well, I know where he goes running.
Yeah, no kidding.
Take a trip to the PNW there.
Take a trip, be like, "Hey, man, good to see you."
I know a guy who's done that. I know a guy who's done that in the industry. A big fan of Cam. He would just go run that hill. And finally, he met him one day. Yeah.
Mount Pisgah or something like
Mount
that.
Pisgah.
Yeah, it was mad.
There you go.
That's crazy. I'd love to sit down with Jocko, man, and just have coffee with him. He's such a good dude. Like, I love his leadership. I love his attitude. Like, when he first started the whole thing about good, that failed good. Like, there's some good that comes out of bad situations, and that started like showing me whole different things. Like, I had this trip planned out with my family, and I had it down to a T. Like, we're gonna go here, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. We'll get here this time. Shit went out of fucking whack. Work called in. Weather was bad. I was sour as shit, and I kind of stopped back and I think, good. We'll do it. There's some good that came from the situation. I said, is there? And I'm like, well, yeah, look at this. We had to settle for that, but now we're getting our money back. We can actually go on this date. We save this money. We're able to do more. And we're able to see this, which we weren't in the first place. So there is some good from it. And she started going, oh, yeah. And so it's little things like that I pick up from people and listen to them. And David Goggins, what he went through in his childhood, and Cam Haynes, and during all the stuff he went through. I try to take that, incorporate that within myself and how I do things and how I operate. So it's some good stuff. And
January 2020. I sorry to cut you off. January 2020, I it was right before pandemic, like right as it was starting, right? But that January, things were still cool. There was just talk in the air, right? I bought my father and my two boys tickets to Jocko's live event. He was having a live event in Seattle. So I loaded my dad up and my two boys, and we drove down from Vancouver, drove down to Seattle and went to his live event. And I'd been listening to Jocko for a while, listening to his podcast, consuming anything Jocko. I really loved him as well. And I'd listen to his podcast with my boys in the car, so they were very aware. And I'd send my dad, Instagram, snippets from Jocko. Anyway, super fan. So I bought them live tickets. We went down and we watched his live event. It was a great event. It was like a couple hours long, and we got as close as we could get, because he was doing a book signing after, because it was a bit of a book tour as well. And so there was a big lineup to get a book signed and meet Jocko and get a photo taken with him or whatever. Huge lineup. I tried to get down in the lineup, but anyway, what I was getting at was like, he had a couple of guys that were working for him walk the lineup, and they came up to me and my boys and my dad, and they're like, hey kids, they're like, where'd you guys come from? And we're like, hey, we came from British Columbia, Canada. And they're like, oh no kidding, that's a ways away. They're like, are you heading back there tonight? And we're like, yeah, we're driving back tonight. It's a couple hours to get home. And they're like, no kidding, this is already 11:30 at night, right? They're like, you guys got school tomorrow? They're like, yes sir, we got school tomorrow. They're like, come with me. So they took the four of us right to the front of the lineup and to meet Jocko. And I was first in line. I'm like, hey Jocko, how's it going? Like, the nicest man you've ever met. And not to say that, he's got his persona online, and not that that's mean or anything, but like, he's very militant, straightforward. But everyone knows what Jocko's like, but just a super nice, like, sweet human being, really. Like, He took time to meet me, my kids, and he had a lineup huge. And like I said, it's 11:30 at night, and this lineup stretches way around the building. Like, he's got a long evening ahead of him. And he took time to meet everybody, take photos with us, sign our books, and just like really, really great human. So yeah, that's a solid answer, because like he's a solid dude.
Yeah, he definitely is, man. And I like him a lot. So it'd be cool ever to meet him in life, man. Good dude.
Cool, John. Well, like I said, I appreciate your time. Loved this conversation. There's tons of value in it, so really appreciate it. Thanks for being on.
No, man, I appreciate you having me on, and again, it's an honor. It's cool to finally talk to you and meet up with you, man. It's been a long time coming. Like I said, I remember when we were doing them from your house, and I still have my Powerline podcast sticker on my Yeti, the one with the California one. I still have that one.
So awesome.
Nope, I still have that one, man. No, thanks for having me, bro.
All right, thanks for listening, everyone. All right, guys. Once again, hope you got some value out of the episode. I know I did. I enjoy every single one of these conversations, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. One more time for the folks in the back, if you could like, subscribe, follow, make sure you're following either in audio form and video form on YouTube. Much appreciated. All right, guys, play safe. Peace.